Hello Pokemon fans, my name is Rayman Hill, and this is my first ever video here on YouTube, so as a real life series anyway. Now, this series is called Pokescience. We will probably be talking about most things that are scientific within Pokemon, have a few theories here and there, and overall just goof around and see what possibilities could come up. Now, this series started on Pokemon Amino, so if you wanted to go check out my other theories that I do have on my channel, I'll have a link in the description down below on where I started, where I came from, and what gave me my inspiration to start this channel. Now, in this series, I will be talking about how Pokemon relates to science, and what better way to start off with the big man himself, Charles Darwin. Now, before I get into this, I want to apologize for those I may offend by this content or this post. Now, before I go into this, I want to apologize for those I might offend by this content. Obviously, I have no religious standpoint in this, and for those of you who still don't believe in evolution, I'm sorry, you might want to leave this video now, but if you're not, then get ready for the video, okay? Alright, let's get started. For those of you who don't know, Charles Darwin happens to be an English naturalist geologist, best known for the contributions to the evolutionary theory. Most of you in high school probably already know this, but for those of you who don't, just keep waiting. Now, by observing in genetic variations as animals and pedigrees grew bigger, he was able to determine that species of animals have differed from a common ancestor and at some time from it or another. Looking into the topic, Darwin was able to establish branches of families with select traits to better their chances at survival in the long run, literally survival of the fittest. This theory was established to be natural selection, which contributes to the artificial selection that involves selective breeding. Most of you already know this because, hey, you do it all the time. Ever drop off a Pokemon in the daycare? There you go, right there. You're breeding for IVs and EVs. EVs, effort values, and IVs are all selective traits that we, as humans, put on our Pokemon. This is also a selection factor that we implement into our Pokemon and what we use here in real life as well. Now, I know that's a lot to take in, but let's look at the Animal Kingdom and the Pokemon Kingdom, shall we? Now, since it's usually following the laws of nature, Pokemon follow the same fundamental laws that we have here in our reality. They go by a few of the overall classifications that we use, just so we can get a better understanding of where these Pokemon lie. I use this acronym, Donkey Kong's Party Clock of Games, just to remember this fun little acronym. Donkey Kong, or DK, is Domain and Kingdom, alright? Now, Party Clock, which is Phylum, Order, and Class. Games, which is usually Genus, and then S, well, I usually just tack it on into games, and that's Species. Now, all of these apply towards the classifications of where we put our animals in real life. There are probably over maybe, 100, maybe 200,000 species that can be identified in just the animal kingdom alone, and that's just a random number that came to the top of my head. But by comparing the two, they use the same fundamental laws that we can go over right now. Both of them are, I guess you could say, following the classification system that is applied. Both animals and Pokemon eat each other to effectively survive and grow. Both use evolution or metamorphosis to grow stronger. Both breed to produce offspring. Both may be subjugated to artificial selection for desirable traits, such as IVs and EVs. Now, as stated before, both can be found in the wild and may have overall different phenotypes to better adapt to their environment. Now, these are just Pokemon and our animals in reality are not created equal at all. The species that does not have desirable traits, simply put, die out because they do not have the correct phenotypes. This could be applied towards animals with vestigial organs, or organs that serve no purpose anymore, such as our molars that we have in our teeth. However, once a species dies out, it actually causes a chain reaction within the ecosystem. Those who hunted the previous species now have to resort to other methods to find food to just sustain their very existence. Now, for those of you who don't know what phenotypes or genotypes are, just think of it like this: P for physical traits and G for genetic traits. Phenotype, genotype. Now, applying what we already know about Pokemon, we can see that all of these factors apply to Pokemon as well again. Not only Pokemon, but we as humans aren't created equal as well. Some have better traits, others do not. Now, if we look closer into the anime, we can see that there are fossil Pokemon, which we already know that can be revived at a certain point within the game. Well, this actually enforces the theory that natural selection is obvious, well, actually it's plainly obvious that is applied to Pokemon because of the fact that there are, well, there you guessed it, fossil Pokemon. But you may ask yourself, what does this mean? Well, it means that depending on the date of the fossil, which we can determine by radioactive decay, we can tell roughly when that Pokemon lived and roughly when it died. During that time period, we can effectively tell that there was an ecosystem and that there was selection pressures against the Pokemon that were there, and in order to do so, this Pokemon lived, died, and was fossilized due to the crust and, molten lava that probably covered it up and pressed it down and compressed it into the earth. You can thank your buddy Groudon for that one. Unlike the Pokemon world, we lack the technology to revive fossils or prehistoric animals, or at least for now anyway. But we can roughly re-image or graphic or even fantasize on what Pokemon and or dinosaurs looked like way back then. Now, of course, Pokemon and dinosaurs aren't at what you expect now. A dinosaur now could eventually end up being a bird. And that's actually, an accurate revelation that most scientists have occurred to because of the fact that some of the animals that we do have now stole homologous structures within their bone structures. And we can compare these two and relate them back to a common ancestor, allowing us to see where this may have branched off at one point in time or another. Now again, since we do lack the technology to actually revive these Pokemon, I'm looking at you, Jurassic World, we will actually have to just rely on digital technology to bring us what could have been or what was back to our life, okay? I almost forgot that, evolution does apply to something called branching. When Pokemon evolve, they usually are able to change their physical appearance while obtaining the new skills and abilities, even as a type overhaul that allows them to survive better while pushing them up the food chain. Something like a Carvanha evolving into Sharpedo. I don't know how that really works, but it definitely gives him an advantage in the water because he's faster, he has sharper teeth, and he's evolved with rough skin. He actually kept that ability from the Carvanha stage form, so I guess making it into Sharpedo makes sense with that ability. These traits are what make Pokemon more deadly as they continue to evolve and change in their evolutionary tree. When mutations of sorts are found in the family, there is a possibility of a new species or Pokemon or animal to be created, and the traits usually follow with the survival of the animal, whether it be both positive or negative. Vestigial organs will eventually occur due to the environmental change that will eventually occur. Here are a few Pokemon that obtain desirable traits due to the mutation within genetic code. Carvanha, I'm mentioning Carvanha to Sharpedo. They got sharper teeth and rougher scales, and it turns into a shark. That's a huge improvement unless that shark is just a giant fish, which in this case, it does apply. Carvanha is based off of Piranha, so it does, I guess, make sense, but the fact that it, mutates into something that big upon evolution or metamorphosis, if you will, is a bit odd. Another reference would be Torchic to Combuskin. It actually grows arms, claws, and its feet in strength are actually doubled and maybe even tripled. Its fighting capabilities are now increased. Not to mention it can fuse fire out of its mouth. That's a pretty big improvement if you ask me. Torchic is able to do the same, but to a much lesser extent. With the help of environmental inheritance and mutation in genetic code, some Pokemon and animals may develop traits to allow them to see in the dark, break open shell seeds, innate camo for hiding, sharper teeth for whipping open flesh, or canine legs for running faster. Pokemon also follow the use of environmental inheritance, as in some cases Pokemon evolve simply by training next to a mossy covered stone or is exposed to fire, water, thunder, or a leaf stone. By doing so, they are able to develop these new traits. But remember, not all evolutions make sense in the Pokemon world, but they do have positive and negative effects that may help or hurt the ecosystem accordingly. Now, due to the genetic variation, environment inheritance, and mutations in genetic code of both Pokemon and animals, they are freely able to evolve and continue growing new traits to better themselves. Yet, some Pokemon don't develop traits at all, and simply put, they do not evolve. This means that the environmental changes that they may not adapt to and may die off because of this. Some of these examples would be including Farfetch'd, who's actually on the borderline of extinction due to the hunting of, duck in a real-world comparison, from humans because they're specific delicacy, just like a Slowbro is with their tails. In this case, we don't kill them, we just let them regrow them. Dunsparce is another example, and Shuckle, and Skarmy, and Delibird. Now, some of these Pokemon are actually top-tier Pokemon in the competitive scene, but in the natural world where things are a little more harsh, some of these actually have the best capabilities, such as Skarmory and its armored wings, or a very very strong presence like Delibird, who, in all honesty, shouldn't really even be around. These Pokemon may survive, but without a progressive mutagen or an environmental inheritance, it will stay the same and may not contribute to the death of an entire species. Now, of course, this doesn't stop here. Similar to how animals develop new traits over long periods of time, so do Pokemon as well. This is due to the selection pressures that are introduced to the environment. Now you may ask yourself, what is a selection pressure? Selection pressures are defined as agents or differential morality or fertility that tends to make a population change genetically. This means a variety of things could happen, such as the introduction of a new species, such as human interaction, climate change, an epidemic, plague, or disease, a catastrophe, or an extinction of a species, and overpopulation. And those are just a few of those that affect the world around us, and they're not the end of that list. Now, because of this, Pokemon must follow the same steps in evolution or metamorphosis that we as a species have occurred as well. Because of these, we see resemblance in Pokemon and their evolution lines. This is due to their domain or stature within one area. And because of this fact, they were once part of the same family or genus of Pokemon. An example would be something like this. Pokemon that better adapt to their niches that are present have their advantages because of the fact that they are becoming their own species due to the selection pressures or evolutionary boundaries. Again, the example would be a Pokemon such as Tailo or Pidove. Now, even though both of their phenotypes are indeed different, they look nothing alike from each other. Let's just say, hypothetically, one bird went north and one went south, or east or west. Depending on the niche or environment that is there, they're going to eventually adapt traits over a long period of time until the point where they can no longer reproduce with each other, thus creating two new species that actually help or may hurt their survival chances of whatever niche that they're in. In most cases, Tailo has a longer beak for cracking open the strong shells of Hoenn region, while the Pidove maybe have a short beak but faster or more aerodynamic wings for catching prey when it evolves into an pheasant. Now, because they are new species, they do fight for survival and the competition is strong. They must develop new traits by non-random mating, introducing new species into the mix to better their own gene pool. However, this may not always be a good thing. In the animal world, all animals typically overproduce and wipe out all available resources within the area. So to keep this in check, other predators take control and may limit the volume of Pokemon that may be breeding or overpopulating the area. Other limiting factors such as genetic diseases, catastrophes, geographical boundaries are also contributors to the limitations of overpopulation of Pokemon. This is generally why we don't see only Garchomps in the desert or Sharpedos in the sea. Causing certain resources to change or wiped out entirely will actually render some of the Pokemon that are living there to be useless, or in most cases, kill them off entirely. Now, you guys may know some of these things are obvious already, but that's just one step ahead for you guys when you're actually in the Pokemon world, if you ever get there, or you just playing pretend. Just know that in the natural science world, that Pokemon is a lot more harsh and you probably wouldn't want to be in there just because of the fact that you have electric rodents going around, or dragons the size, or that has the ability to fly, and basically is one of the ultimate predators that are out there. Pseudo-legendary knocking on your door isn't the best idea. Now, I hope you guys learned something. Thank you for watching my video, and please check back for more content. I will be posting maybe at least once a week. This is my first video, of course, so obviously it may or may not be that good. If you guys learned something, please comment down below. If you're from PKA, hey, how you doing? And if this is your first time being here, welcome to Poke Science. I'm Rayman Hill, and you guys have a good day. Now, I hope you guys learned something. Thank you for watching my video, and please check back for more content. I will be posting maybe at least once a week. This is my first video, of course, so obviously it may or may not be that good. If you guys learned something, please comment down below. If you're from PKA, hey, how you doing? And if this is your first time being here, welcome to Poke Science. I'm Rayman Hill, and you guys have a good day.